Welcome back to My Conscious Dad. You're listening to your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Today we are talking about emotional honesty. And before we went on the break, we were talking about all of the things that get in the way of being emotionally honest.
Yeah, and so another thing that gets in the way is that we as human beings decide that our feelings are a bad thing. And when we decide that they're a bad thing, then what we do is the way that we deal with it is that we stuff it, or we delay it, or we ignore it. Some of us, we deny it, or we're pretending that it's not there. And what an example of what that looks like is someone goes, "Hey, are you okay?" And you go, "Yeah, I'm fine." When we can clearly see that you're angry, we can clearly see that you're upset or annoyed. And what we do is, instead of just being honest and saying, I'm not feeling good right now, I need a timeout. You know what I'm saying? For whatever reason, we have trained ourselves to act like everything is okay. And we can clearly tell that you're not, and your kids can tell that you're not. And so what you're doing is you're not being honest. You're denying yourself the experience of feeling what it feels like to be angry or to be upset. And so we have all these emotions that we stuff, and all that stuff that we're pushing down into our emotional tank. What happens at a certain point, all that stuff that we're shoving down into the emotional tank, it ends up exploding. Have you ever realized that you went off on somebody, got angry at someone, and then kind of look back and go, why did I go off so much on this person? I wasn't really even that mad at that person. And it could be just weeks and months of stuff that you've been stuffing.
Yeah, I also kind of noticed too while you were explaining that is I will convince myself that my feelings are bad or wrong, or I shouldn't be feeling that way until somebody validates it. So if I'm angry, I'm sometimes mad at myself for being angry about something, but if a friend of mine comes along and says, "Oh yeah, I'd be livid if they did that to me," then I'm like, yeah,
I am livid.
Yeah. So I realize that I need to be my feelings need to be validated for me to feel like they're good, or they matter, or they're real.
I'm glad that you said that, because there's got to be hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of teenagers that are out there that are feeling the same exact way, and all they're yearning for is their mom or dad to say, "Hey, if you are feeling upset, it's okay to feel like that." One of the greatest tools I've ever learned when it comes to sales is a sales technique, but I don't use it for sales. What I use it for is coaching my clients, especially my parenting clients. I teach them the feel, felt, found. It's a way to help open up a conversation with your kids to identify that what they're feeling is okay. Hey, I know how you feel. I felt the same way. When you let them know that you felt the same way, it's letting them know that, hey, we have this commonality together. Like I've also felt like that. I know how you feel. I felt the same way. And what I found out is, and then I can tell them or share with them now what the learning experience that I had. It's like planting the seed into their mind of how to deal with it without giving them the advice or telling them what I think that they should do. It's in a very unabrasive way and a very effective way to have people connect with you, to allow themselves to be heard. Right? I know how you feel. I felt the same way. And what I found out is that and then it gives you an opportunity to kind of course correct.
That kind of goes back to the parents who hide it and say that, nothing's wrong, instead of saying, you know what, I've failed before. I've felt like this before. Here's what I did. Hopefully it works for you. And it's not in a, this is what you need to be doing kind of way.
Yeah. Instead of telling them that, from a way of coming from that you need to fix it, you're just helping them identify with, hey, they're not the only one that feels like that. You felt like that too. Now there's some commonality there. Now they trust you a little bit more. Now their ears are open. So when you go to what I found out is, and then you start sharing the learning experience, now they're actually listening to it. And then later on, that seed can now cultivate, and then they can come to their own conclusion of, oh, wow. And then they can have their own realization of their own answers. Now, the last thing that I wrote down regarding what gets in the way is, if and when you decide that your feeling and what you're feeling is a bad thing, then we decide that we don't want to feel it. And so what we slowly do is we slowly turn off the feeling machine. And this is what breaks my heart. I have this exercise in the teen training where I got, kids aged 13 to 17, and we do this exercise called the bus. And so all the kids line up in a single file line facing me, and I go through, two different scenarios, and they have to choose to get off the bus on either side. So I'll say left side, pizza, right side, steak. And the kids will just get off on whatever side they choose, and they get to express to me why they chose pizza versus steak. And I don't make them bad and wrong for whatever choice. It's just more of an awareness exercise. And this is what breaks my heart. When I get to the question, sadness or happiness, 99.9% of the time, if not 100% of the time, everyone gets off on the bus unhappy. And so when I ask them, why did you choose happy? Undeniably, every time they share, they talk about how they don't ever want to feel sad. And that breaks my heart, because what it's telling me is these kids are emotionally shut down. They're like robots. And we're not robots. We're emotional beings. We're spiritual, enlightened beings inside that are trying to remember who we are so that we can be fully expressed. And what our kids are learning in the home is that it's not okay to express my feelings, because the last 3 or 4 or 10 times that I've got shut down, or the message that I've been told is to not do that, or because my parents can't handle it, maybe I shouldn't express myself. And I think that's the message we're sending to our kids, that I'm not okay with myself, or I don't know how to deal with your emotions, so just don't feel them around me. And I think that's, whether we're sending that intentionally or unintentionally or unconsciously, it's still a sad reality that our kids they're coming to their own conclusion that it's not okay to feel what they're feeling and expressing themselves in a healthy way.
Yeah, that whole picture that you just painted, that stuff is real. I have, obviously I don't have kids, so I don't know, but I have friends who are very excited, very happy people that when any of us start talking about something serious that's going on in the world, or anything emotional, they check out, because
they walk away.
Yeah, they don't want to be in a conversation about people who've lost their lives. They don't want to be in a conversation about serious things like work and family. They just want to be happy all the time. And it's surprising to me, because there's a lot of people who are like that. And I think it's because their parents are like that. Their parents are always trying to be happy. Their parents never really show any signs of, I'm struggling right now, or I'm unhappy.
One of the greatest books I've read about parenting, and I don't remember the title, and I apologize, but it has to do with teaching parents how to raise their kids, being honest about their feelings and their emotions. And the biggest takeaway that I learned from that book is, when you allow your kids or teach your kids to experience their experiences and feel their emotions in a healthy way, what happens is that little kid turns into an emotional, healthy young man or young woman, and they transition into a healthy, emotional, healthy adult. And what happens is when your kids are young and you teach them that it's okay to feel what they're feeling, they run through the feeling and allow it to happen in a natural course. So if I'm sad at the age of 12 and I'm allowed to feel sad in a natural way, in an environment where I'm not looked down or judged upon, and I can feel those feelings, my sadness might run its course in about an hour. And so as I get good at allowing myself to feel like that through the years, at age 16, age 19, age 20, age 25, I can cut that natural process from an hour to 45 minutes, to 35 minutes, to 10 minutes, to 5 minutes. I can learn how to be mad and be angry in 5 minutes and then get over it. But what happens is, when you suppress the person from allowing the natural process of feeling their feelings, and you delay it, you actually make it go longer. And now kids and young adults are experiencing their sadness or their anger for days, for weeks, for months, or you're prolonging the process rather than allowing it to run its course and get through it quicker. You're not teaching your kids to allow them to have their feelings and let it run its course so that they can get off it or get over it. What you're doing is you're teaching them to suppress it, and which now you're in resistance to it, and it causes it to kind of linger on for longer periods of time.
Yeah, as you were explaining that scenario, I was kind of imagining, a kid going through a breakup, and after the first breakup, the parents are always there like, oh, it's going to be okay, and just give it time, and, they're all loving and caring. And then after the second breakup, third breakup, fourth, the parents just kind of let them do their own thing because they don't, they already did it. But instead of after every breakup, why can't you be there and say, hey, you know what, it's going to be okay, give it time, do the whole spiel again and again and again, even if it's 15, 16 times. It's kind of like you're after, I guess, for example, after not having that for the second breakup, third breakup, fourth breakup, it kind of feels like they don't remember, or they don't remember what it's like to go through a breakup, and it's just another breakup to them, but it means everything to you, or it means everything to your kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Earlier I told you that I wanted to share a couple stories with you. Do I have permission to share a story?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, this story is called The 6-Year-Old Who Hated Her Teacher. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I feel like a dad at nighttime and tell you a bedtime story. So pay attention to the story, because I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are on it. One day I overheard a 6-year-old child say, "I hate my new teacher." Her mother immediately said, "I don't want you to use that word. That is not a nice word. I don't want to hear you using it. It's rude, and it's something for you not to be saying." The child was silent. When the mother came out of the room, I asked her, "What did your daughter didn't like about the new teacher?" The mother said, "I don't know, but I don't want her using that word. I just don't want her talking like that. She doesn't need to use words like that. She can find something else to say about her teacher. I don't want that kind of language in my house. I want this to be a house where we talk about love, not hate. There's already too much hate in the world, and I don't want it in my house too. I just won't allow it." So what are your thoughts on the story? What did you hear, and what's your feedback regarding the mom?
I hear the mom talking about what she wants her kid to focus on versus what she doesn't want them to focus on.
It's exactly what you were saying just about 5 minutes ago. It's about focusing on what I don't want you to say, rather than, wow, my daughter has some emotional stuff that's coming up for her. Instead of me giving myself permission to sit down with her and facilitate a process and teach my daughter how to get out some of those emotions and make sense of what she's feeling and why is she feeling like that, instead of helping her go through a natural process of understanding and figuring things out and checking in with her, we're not really helping her grow. All we're doing in that scenario is making her bad and wrong for using the word hate. And all we're saying, and we're not saying that that's bad and wrong, all we're saying is that there is a higher level of consciousness in your parenting and your ability to really give your kids what they need to have them end up being emotionally healthy in what they're feeling. What do you think that little daughter feels like now when she goes into a room?
Well, she's probably beating herself up because she doesn't really know any. She doesn't know why her feelings are wrong, because it's just something that naturally came to her. And she doesn't naturally love her teacher. So she would never walk around and say, "Oh, I love my 6th grade teacher." Now the feelings that she was sharing weren't validated.
Now here's one scenario of what a conscious parent, a higher level of consciousness, because we're all at different levels. But a higher level of consciousness, a parent would look and go, "Wow, I need to talk to my husband tonight, and we need to sit down and figure out, how did our daughter come to that conclusion to use that word?" That little 6-year-old daughter picked up that from somewhere. To say that I hate my teacher, she must have picked that up from listening to either me and my wife. We must have taught her somewhere to think that it's okay to hate people, right? Or to come to that conclusion. So from the responsible version, I can really sit down with my wife at night and go, hey, tomorrow we need to have a conversation with little Susie because, somewhere she thought that it's okay to hate people, and I want to course correct that, but from the responsible version, rather than blaming little Susie that's where she came up with that from somewhere else outside the home.
And there's a lot of people that could hear this story or be in a situation like this and say, well, she definitely didn't hear that from me. She probably heard it from someone at school. And even though you're not responsible for that part, you did hear her say it. So now you're responsible for what you're going to do about it. And
there's a way to course correct that in a healthier way. And we're not saying that in that scenario that you're bad and wrong because that's the way that you've decided to handle it. All we're saying is that there's a possibility to handle it in a more effective way, in a more empowering way, in a way that doesn't send a message to the little girl that it's not okay to feel what you're feeling. All we're saying is that you can open up a whole new discussion where you can help her come to that conclusion in a healthy way where she processes her feelings still are validated, but then there's an opening there for you to teach her that there's other words that she can choose to use, or you can start teaching her new possibilities, new perceptions as well. Here's story number 2. You ready? Someone told me about a time when he and his girlfriend were on a date. She asked him if he was ready to leave. He thought she was asking him because she was ready to leave herself. So she said, I guess so. Even though he would have preferred to stay, he then asked her if she wanted to leave, and she said, yeah, I suppose so. So they left. Later they talked about it. They discovered that when she asked the question about leaving, she was simply feeling afraid that he was bored. She said that actually she wanted to stay a little longer at the party too.
That always happens to me. And it's one, a communication thing that I've noticed, but two, now that we're talking about this, it does have to do with me not honestly saying, you know what, I would rather stay, but if you want to leave, we could go. I just skip to the we can leave if you want to go.
But I think the point here is that she didn't honestly tell him at the time, hey, my fear is coming up that, I got this weird feeling that you're bored, and if you are, I'm totally willing to go. But if you're not bored, hey, I'm having a good time. And for whatever reason, she didn't feel comfortable enough to be honest what she was really feeling. And it wasn't until hindsight later on that they're able to have that discussion and go, oh my God, we left a cool party and a fun environment all because of our fears, and one of us was afraid to really just be honest about it.
Yeah, that's just weird because I do that all the time. So I was having a moment.
So here are a couple of suggestions that I want to give some of the listeners on how, now that I have this new awareness about taking my emotional honesty to the next level, how do I get better at that? And so one of my suggestions is to practice creating a safe and non-judgmental environment within your home that both you and your family can learn how to share your feelings and what's coming up for you in a safe way, that you don't offer advice or you don't have to course correct, but just kind of like a safe environment for all of your family members to vent. And so what I do sometimes when I go into families' homes and I teach them how to create a family discussion night, I'll start off with that as the bare minimum. And what I'll do is I'll facilitate a process where it's a safe space for us to just 3 seconds to express whatever we're feeling, whatever's coming up for us today, just so that we can get off of it, so that we can surrender it and let it go. And then what I do is I teach all the participants, once you're done sharing, your response is, thank you for sharing. And it doesn't matter if someone's speaking towards you. Like, let's say our family's having this discussion, and I'm facilitating this process, and you start off with, I really want to share that I'm upset with my dad because my dad, said some things to me that aren't true, and you're expressing that. Now, within me, because I'm your dad, I have to not take it personal. I have to not try to defend myself. I have to not try to raise my hand when you're done and go, hey, can I respond to that? No, this is about just creating a safe space to allow you to feel what you're feeling without one of us trying to make it right or correct it or to, give you my point of view. That's not what this is about. Maybe later on, privately you can, but this is just a space to allow us to feel what we're feeling so that it's validated, that it's heard, that it's recognized, and that it's acknowledged by our family members, the people that we care about most. So what's the common response that we give after we share?
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate you sharing, and I appreciate your honesty is a powerful way to let people know that they're heard and that what they're feeling is valid and that it's acknowledged.
Hey, you know what? We had to take a break, but stay tuned for more of My Conscious Dad right here on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Welcome back to My Conscious Dad on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Today we were talking about emotional honesty, and if you want to hear it again or if you missed the show, you can find our podcast online at hometownstation.com. So before we left on the break, we were talking about some tips that you may want to consider putting into your home and in your family, and we're going to go ahead and go over the last few.
And so, before the break, I was talking about creating a safe and non-judgmental space for you and your family to feel comfortable enough sharing and expressing what it is that you're feeling or whatever's coming up for you, and then have the classic or common response of thanks for sharing or thank you for being honest. And then alongside that, I would say give your own self permission to feel what you're feeling more and more. Practice allowing yourself to check in with yourself and say, what am I feeling? A lot of times when someone goes, hey, how's it going? And a lot of times we respond with fine or I'm okay. And those aren't feelings. And a lot of times I'll correct people, especially in the training room. I'll tell them that's not a feeling. So I'll actually force people to actually look at themselves and check in and come up with a feeling. I'm nervous, I'm feeling excited, or I'm feeling neutral. Neutral is a feeling because it's just, I'm here, I'm ready, I'm open. So practice, and give yourself permission to feel your own feelings so that you're a great example to your kids. And
I think it'd be a good idea. I don't normally do this, but I have been in the training room where kids are struggling to find the right word for what they're feeling. One, because of fear, and two, because they don't really know. Sometimes I don't really know how I'm feeling. I know that I just feel bad or I just feel sad. And maybe identifying, you don't necessarily have to identify why, but identify what the feeling actually is. Because there's a difference between being sad and being angry, and sometimes they get mixed.
And a lot of times when I see kids that are struggling with experiencing or articulating how they feel, then I give myself permission to give them a couple examples. And I'll say, do you feel sad? Do you feel angry? Are you annoyed? Are you frustrated? And I'll just go down the list until they go, yeah, that one. And so that's your job, mom or dad, is to help your kids find a word that describes how they're feeling. You have to teach them that. They're probably not learning that at school. They're learning math and science and history, but they're not learning about them. They're not learning about emotions or feelings or how to express it. No one's teaching them that. That's your job. Your job is to help them develop a healthy emotional sense of themselves and who they are and what's coming up for them.
And I think that, because you do that to me a lot, where if I don't want to talk to you, you'll say, why? Is it because this? Are you feeling this? And even though it's really annoying, it's a really good way to open the door and get your kids to respond to one, especially when you do it in a playful way.
And so here's the last suggestion. My last suggestion is that if you're not really good at expressing your emotions or what you're feeling, I would say start with a diary. Get yourself a notebook and label it emotional diary, and practice noting or writing down how you're feeling or how you felt throughout the day. And then just keep writing and keep checking in. It's more the awareness. You need some emotional awareness before you can actually create the emotional honesty. And so it's through the awareness, and just keep writing down how you feel until you gradually keep graduating to higher levels until you become comfortable enough sharing in the moment what's coming up for you. You know, a lot of times in some of these seminars or workshops we do, we have some graduates that have done this work, and they're, you know, highly intelligent, emotionally intelligent, or highly conscious people. They get in there and they just start sharing emotionally, and they're just and I have other people come up to me that are first timers, and I'll go, oh my God, this is like an advanced class. Other people are sharing so deep. How do they do that? And my common answer is that they've just been practicing. It's just a practice. You have to decide that you want to learn that side of you, and that you want to be aware, and that it is a healthy process to go through. And I want to take that journey of learning how to fully express myself so that I can know who I am and what's going on with me. The last thing that you want is to have your son or daughter, when they get into their 30s or 40s, is struggling with expressing themselves, because they're going to struggle in relationships. And that's it might be after the third or fourth husband or wife, or broken, failed marriages, that you sit down with all of their exes and go, what was it? How come you guys couldn't figure it out? And, you know, you got the son-in-law or the daughter-in-law sitting there going, I try to get them to share and open up, and they just wouldn't. And that's gonna be it's gonna be heartbreaking to know that you didn't teach your kids how to feel what they're feeling in a healthy way, and learn how to fully express themselves.
Yeah, and real quick before we have to go, one of the other things that I kind of wanted to reiterate or point out was just the teaching your kids who to be and what to do and what to be, not what not to do and what not to be. So thank you so much for joining us today on My Conscious Dad. We're here every Friday from noon to 1.
Our new time.
Our new time right here on your
12
hometown
o'clock.
on your hometown station,
Every
AM
Friday.
1220 KHTS.
See you then.